All right. Day 10. It's March 10th, I think. It is March 10th. Day 10 of our March meditation challenge. So find your body, settle in, whether you're sitting or laying down. Again, kind of drop in, right? Get yourself into whatever space that you kind of come to, creating this space for yourself. And by now that, that should be that should be not easy. I guess easy, it's never easy. But it should be a little more routine, I guess, even though maybe 10 days not enough for it to be a routine. But just kind of notice what that looks like, what that feels like, and then just kind of dropping in whatever that looks like for you. Finding the body for a moment, connecting with the breath. And the timer starts now. 15 minutes. Noticing, witnessing, accepting exactly where you are. Noticing what are you bringing with you, what's with you. Yesterday, we were talking about surrender and resistance, and how resistance is based in ego and fear, and how surrender comes and then possibly opens a path for a choice. And I touched upon feedback. And that is something that I'm going to table for a moment. I will get back to feedback, but something else showed up today that is, I think, more in line to, or leads into from where we were going, or what we were talking about. And that is a choice. So today we will ponder upon the choices that we make and the choices that we feel that we don't maybe have. And as we were talking about yesterday, surrender, meaning accepting enough to remove the resistance. Because while you can have an acceptance for whatever it is that you're looking at, there still can be resistance, or possibly the resistance comes out of certain blind spots that we've talked about before that. But once you surrender, the resistance is removed, may not be the right choice of words. It kind of disappears, or it lifts a little bit, and there may still be some, because there's this moment between surrender and resistance. You can kind of go back and forth a little bit, right? But what I find super interesting, that the moment you surrender, truly surrender internally, right? When you stop fighting yourself, right? That's what surrender means to me. and you kind of have to figure out what is your relationship with surrender. How do you define surrender? And you may not want to use that word if that does not resonate. Maybe acceptance enough is enough, but I don't think they're the same, because I still think, again, you can have acceptance and you can still resist, and you can have acceptance and then you can surrender. And when you surrender, you're not resisting anymore. You're aligning with the flow, the energy flow of whatever you're experiencing, if that makes any sense. And as I said yesterday, just to kind of follow up, or maybe just pick up exactly where I left off, from surrender, from a state of surrender, emerges a path. But when I think about it more, or when I, sit with the surrender state, or when I find myself in a state of surrender, I feel that even better than a path, you are capable of making a choice. So that how it leads me into the whole choice conversation. Because I think having a mindset that everything is a choice is super important. Especially when you start looking at the things where I have to do this, or I can't do that, or I want to do this, but I can't, or I don't want to do this, but I have to. Right? And those are maybe little things, but the mindset is already, I don't have a choice, right? The mindset is already powerlessness. The mindset is you are not in charge. The mindset is you are not accountable because you don't have a choice. And I think shifting the mindset to you always have a choice. And let's focus on the always just for a moment, because there is an exception to the rule, but I will table that for a moment. So let's just agree for a moment that you always have a choice. The mindset is that you always have a choice. You may not like the choice that you have to make, but let's say that you don't like the consequences of whatever even more, and therefore you're making the choice, right? So for example, I don't want to go to work today, but I have to. Well, I am making a conscious choice to go to work, because if I don't go to work, I don't get paid. And if I don't get paid, then I'll be short of money or whatever, or I will feel like I can't do things, or I don't, all of that, right? All of that. So again, it's a choice. You're making a choice. I am making a choice. I may not like the choice that I'm making, but it's still a choice that I'm making because for whatever reason, right? And then notice how that immediately shifts the energy into a power. Now you're in a place of power. You are making a choice. Right? And I think this little shift, this little mindset shift can start with a little things, because at the end of the day, you don't have to go to work, right? You can make a choice and bear the consequences of not going to work. And that may be a funny example, but it illustrates, I think, very well the mindset that I'm trying to present. Now, all of that is nice and dandy. So imagine that you have that mindset. You're like, everything is a choice. I'm good to go. I'm accountable. I'm, in a place of power. I am making choices, even though if I don't like them, right? So we have that baseline set. Now, you find yourself in a place of trigger, dysregulated nervous system, emotional pain, activated in some way. Basically, you find yourself in fear equals in ego. What is the choice then? Do you have a choice? Is it choice based in solidity, right? And what are the consequences bared in that kind of a choice? So, I think we could debate this. There could be a case made, I think, that when you're in ego state, when you're in fear, you do not have a choice at all. But I think the way, at least that I see that working, is if you have awareness, if you are far enough on your journey that you have an awareness that you are in fact in this regulated state, that you are operating out of fear, then I think you're close to having a choice, because the choice can be, for the moment, I need to regulate first before I can do anything else. Right? So that pulls you back into witness perspective, into witness consciousness. It pulls you back a little bit out of the fear mode when you just don't react. Because when you react, that could technically be considered as not a choice, because you're reacting. I think it is a choice at the end of the day, but you don't have enough awareness in order to evaluate that choice before you make it, if that makes any sense. So instead, you just react, and the choice is kind of made, in whatever context it's being made. And then you have to bear the consequences. So I think part of meditation practice, right, is flexing the muscle of recognizing where you are in any given moment, including being in fear, and then being able to make a choice to possibly delay whatever reaction you may have. And then from that place, making a choice that is actually based in not fear or not complete fear. So there's some awareness, right, within you about the choice that you're actually making. It's I think this one it is pretty. There's a lot of folds, right? Because I think the level of awareness that you have around whatever it is that you're looking at needs to be really taken to take needs to be taken into a consideration in order for you to evaluate the level of consciousness of the choice that you're making. Wow. This is a tough one. This is really, really tough one. And it's interesting how it came up for me, because I've been struggling with certain choices that I have made recently. And while I was fully aware and was holding myself responsible for the choices that I've been making, they also, the consequences of those choices were really harmful to me emotionally. And I felt that while I was making conscious choice, I didn't realize, and I didn't think it was, fully out of place of fear. And I still don't think it was fully out of place of fear. And there may be something that I still have to look at, but one way or another, the consequences of my choices were ultimately bringing me into activated state, into emotional pain that seemed to be beyond my willingness to tolerate. And that brought me into that zero emotional capacity to do anything. And that's 15 minutes, which brought me to surrender, which brought me into evaluating my choices, because I am already in the mindset of everything is a choice, and I do hold myself accountable for the choices that I make, no matter where they lead me, right? And that led me into, well, maybe it's time to adjust the choices and make peace with the choices that you don't want to make, but the consequences of those choices may be a little more favorable to your emotional state. That is my emotional state, if that makes any sense. So that's 15 minutes. Well, that was a loaded 15 minutes of having a choice and what that looks like, and being aware of the choice and the consequences and all of it around. It is interesting. So just notice where that lands. Notice if you are in the mindset of everything that you're doing is a choice. Notice how you feel about not having a choice in certain situation. Notice how you feel about making choices when you are in fearful place, or when you are triggered or emotionally dysregulated, because that's a whole another thing that needs to be explored. Notice if there is any capacity in those moments to pause and give yourself space to regulate, so you can actually make a choice that is based in a little more stability, in a little more peace, perhaps, right? Instead of reactive choice. It's a big topic. It definitely is bigger topic than 15 minutes. But that's where I've been going on my path, yesterday to today, or the day before to yesterday to today. So that's where I'm sharing that from a place of really what is happening on my end over here in my space, the choices that I make. So thank you so much for tuning in again. I do appreciate the feedback. I have heard some feedback yesterday, some very, very deep feedback, as in, we're all walking each other home one way or another. It's been a rough journey for quite some time, but I do feel there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, and Maybe that's a wishful thinking, but I am eternally an optimist, and I do believe that all of the choices that you make lead you to light, even though they may first lead you into darkness, but eventually they will lead you to light. Eventually, sometimes you have to make bad choices in order to see that that is not the choice that you want to repeat. So, thank you again, day 10 of our March meditation challenge. I will see you all again tomorrow. From my heart to yours, always keep up the good fight. There is light. Namaste.